Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Harrison placed his toolbox gently on the garage floor, his movements precise and silent. As an electrical engineer, he was accustomed to finding the root of problems in the details. 18 years of marriage had trained him with the same observational skills, except this time, he hoped his intuition was wrong. February rain hammered against the garage roof, the monotonous and persistent sound masking the noise of his entry. Harrison passed through the door connecting the garage to the kitchen, ready to surprise his wife Victoria. He had finished the downtown circuit maintenance work ahead of schedule, returning home 2 hours earlier than expected. The kitchen was filled with the scent of Victoria's favorite lavender candles, but no one was there. Music drifted from upstairs, not the classical music she usually listened to, but some kind of intense modern pop. Harrison set down his toolbox, removed his work boots, and walked quietly toward the stairs. "Victoria?" he called softly. No response. The music continued to emanate from the master bedroom. Harrison climbed the stairs, his fingers sliding along the polished maple banister. When they bought this house 15 years ago, he had personally installed every light and laid every wire. Every corner here bore his sweat and dreams for their family's future. The master bedroom door was half open, a stream of golden light spilling into the hallway. Harrison pushed open the door, ready to announce his early return, but heard Victoria's voice speaking to someone who wasn't him. "He's so predictable." Victoria's voice came clearly, carrying a relaxed and mocking tone he had never heard before. Like a precise machine, leaving at the same time every day, coming home at the same time. Harrison froze, 1 foot still on the threshold. Victoria sat on their bed, her back to the door, phone pressed to her ear. She hadn't noticed his presence. Her laughter was light and carefree, carrying an intimacy she had never shown him. "A walking ATM," she continued, completely unaware of his presence. "Marcus, darling, just wait a little longer. Once the divorce papers are finalized, I'll be free and I'll get everything." These words hit Harrison like ice water. He held his breath, but made no sound. Years of controlling emotions in high-pressure work environments served him well in this moment. He didn't rush in to confront her, didn't demand explanations, but quietly retreated into the shadows of the hallway. The closet door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, he could see Victoria's reflection in the bedroom mirror. She was smiling, no, grinning, while twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "Of course I've thought this through clearly. I've been planning for months." Her voice was full of confidence. "The lawyer says I can get half the assets, including his company's shares." He's completely oblivious, too focused on his precious circuit diagrams to notice what's happening right under his nose. Harrison felt his heartbeat slow, his thinking becoming clear. In a moment when others might feel their world collapsing, Harrison felt his consciousness sharpening, becoming more focused. Every word Victoria spoke became a data point, information to be collected and analyzed. The children? They'll adapt. Besides, they barely see him anyway, always at work. And you're much more interesting than he is. This was a lie. Harrison had always prioritized time with the children, arranging his work around 16-year-old Sophie's science competitions and 13-year-old Daniel's hockey games. Victoria was the one who often missed important events, always claiming headaches or other commitments. "I'll give him the divorce papers next week." Next week, and then it's just a matter of time. Harrison silently retreated, descending the stairs like a ghost. He picked up his toolbox and work boots, quietly leaving the house, careful not to let the door make a sound. Back in his car, he sat motionless, breathing steadily, organizing his thoughts. The betrayal wasn't just infidelity. It was calculation, coldness, months of deception. It was her plan to take not only his money, but also his children. Harrison started the car. He would drive around for an hour, then return home, pretending he had just arrived. He would kiss Victoria's cheek, hug the children, and spend the evening as usual. He wouldn't reveal any sign of knowing the truth. Because Harrison wouldn't react emotionally, he would respond strategically. An hour later, he pulled into the driveway again, this time slamming the car door. "I'm home," he called loudly. Victoria appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing different clothes than before. Her smile looked the same as every day of their 18-year marriage, but now Harrison saw the emptiness behind it. "You're home early," she said, walking down the stairs to greet him. Finished ahead of schedule, he accepted her kiss, feeling only cold calculation. "Dad!" Daniel ran from the hallway, throwing himself into Harrison's arms. Harrison lifted him, savoring the genuine emotion that still existed in this home. "Hey, buddy, did you miss me?" "So much. Mom said we can order pizza tonight, can we?" "Of course." Harrison set his son down as Sophie appeared, more reserved but equally happy to see him. "Hey, Dad, how was the job?" "Went smoothly." He hugged her, noticing she had grown taller. Soon she would be taller than Victoria. "How's your science project coming along?" "Almost finished. Can you look at it later?" "Absolutely." Throughout dinner, Harrison maintained his performance. He laughed at the right moments, asked about their day, and pretended not to notice Victoria checking her phone every few minutes. He studied her, this stranger wearing his wife's face, wondering how he had missed these signs. That night, after the children went to bed, Harrison returned to his home office. He opened his laptop but didn't work. Instead, he began making plans. If Victoria wanted war, she would get war. But it wouldn't be the battle she expected. Harrison placed his hands on the keyboard and began typing. This time it wasn't technical specifications or engineering diagrams, but notes. Names, dates, accounts, assets, everything that would soon become ammunition in the coming conflict. His fingers moved precisely, each keystroke a small but deliberate step toward what would become his most complex project. The blue light from the screen illuminated his face in the dark room, revealing an expression devoid of pain or anger, only determination. For the next 7 days, Harrison maintained this facade. He went to work, came home, helped the children with homework, slept beside Victoria as if nothing had changed. Meanwhile, he was preparing. Under the pretext of updating his will, he spoke with the company's legal team, gathering information about what assets might face in a divorce. He documented household expenses, tracked recent purchases, and quietly moved selected personal assets to more secure locations. On the 8th day after signing the divorce papers, it happened. Harrison sat at the kitchen table, enjoying his Sunday morning coffee, reading the news on his tablet. Sophie and Daniel were upstairs. She was helping him with a school project. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room. Victoria entered, wearing a silk blouse and well-tailored pants, her makeup flawless despite the early hour. She carried a manila envelope. "We need to talk," she said, her voice controlled but with an undercurrent of tension. Harrison looked up at her, expressionless. "About what?" She pulled out the chair opposite him and sat down, placing the envelope on the table between them. Her manicured fingers tapped the envelope twice. "This isn't working anymore, Harrison." "What isn't working?" He took another sip of coffee, watching her over the rim of his cup. "Us. This marriage." She pushed the envelope toward him. "These are divorce papers. I've already spoken with a lawyer." Harrison deliberately set down his cup. He reached for the envelope, opened it, and scanned the first page with practiced detachment. Deep inside, his mind raced, analyzing her strategy. She had chosen Sunday morning, when the children were home but occupied, ensuring he wouldn't make a scene. She had dressed carefully, armoring herself in her best clothes. She expected resistance, perhaps tears, maybe anger. "How long?" he asked calmly. The question seemed to catch her off guard. "What? How long have you been planning this?" Victoria shifted in her seat. "Does it matter? It's over. We both know it's been over for a while." Harrison nodded slowly. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pen, the expensive fountain pen she had given him for their 10th anniversary. With steady hands, he signed every marked page, initialed where needed, and dated everything. When finished, he pushed the documents back across the table. "Anything else?" Victoria stared at him, confusion creeping across her carefully made-up face. "That's it. No fighting. No begging." Harrison leaned back in his chair. "You want freedom. You have it." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her features. Then her cold smile returned. "My lawyer will contact yours about arrangements for the children and property division." "Of course." Harrison stood, collecting his tablet and empty coffee cup. "I assume you'll be moving out." "Yes," she hesitated. "Tomorrow. Do you want to tell the children? Or should I?" "We should tell them together." Harrison nodded again. "Tonight." He turned toward the sink to wash his cup. He heard her exhale behind him, clearly unsettled by his calm. Her high heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the sound fading away. Alone, Harrison gripped the edge of the sink, allowing himself a moment of raw emotion before locking it away again. This was just the opening move. The real game was about to begin. That evening, they gathered the children in the living room. Sophie sat in the armchair with her legs tucked under her, while Daniel sprawled on the carpet. Both sensed the tension, their young faces showing wariness and concern. Victoria spoke first. "Your father and I have something to tell you." Daniel looked up from the carpet. "Are we getting a dog?" "No, buddy," Harrison said gently. "Your mother and I have decided to separate. She'll be moving to her own place tomorrow." Silence felt like a heavy weight. Sophie's face tightened, her eyes moving between her parents. Daniel frowned, confused. "Like divorce?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Victoria confirmed. "Sometimes adults realize they're better apart than together." "But why?" Daniel's face began to crumble. "Did Dad do something wrong?" Victoria opened her mouth, but Harrison interrupted. "No one did anything wrong. People change. Your mother wants a different life now, and that's okay." He saw the flash of anger in Victoria's eyes. She hadn't expected him to frame it so neutrally. "Do we have to move?" Sophie asked, her voice flat. "No," Harrison assured her. "You'll live here with me. Your mother will visit, and sometimes you'll stay with her. But I don't want Mom to leave." Daniel's face completely collapsed. He jumped up and ran to Victoria, wrapping his arms tightly around her waist. "Please don't go." Victoria stroked his hair, murmuring comfort over his head. She shot Harrison a triumphant look over Daniel's head, as if the boy's pain somehow proved her point. Sophie didn't move. She observed the scene with a stillness beyond her years, teenage features showing mature understanding. "I think I'll go to my room," she finally said. "Sophie, wait," Victoria began. "Let her go," Harrison interjected. "She needs time." After Daniel was comforted and sent to his room with assurances that nothing would really change, Harrison and Victoria stood alone in the living room. "That went well enough," she said, smoothing her blouse. "Children adapt," Harrison replied, returning her earlier phone conversation words to her, though she didn't know it. "I'll come for my things tomorrow at noon. I've arranged for movers." Harrison nodded. "I'll be at work. Take what's yours. The lawyers will handle the rest." Victoria walked toward the stairs, then stopped. "I did love you, you know. Once." Harrison met her gaze calmly. "I know." She seemed to expect more, but when nothing came, she continued upstairs. Harrison remained in the living room, listening to the house settle around him. Muffled sobs came from Daniel's room upstairs, while Sophie's door remained tightly closed down the hall. Harrison closed his eyes for a moment, then went to comfort his son. Over the next 2 weeks, Harrison began his investigation. First came the simple things. He joined Marcus's gym, paying for a year's membership up front. The facility was upscale, with glass walls and chrome equipment gleaming under bright lights. Marcus himself was often there, moving among the members with practiced charm. Harrison kept his distance, first establishing himself as just another client. He observed. He waited. On the third day, he struck up a conversation with a woman at the front desk. "Great place," he commented while signing in. "How long has it been open?" "About 5 years," she replied. "Marcus built it from nothing. Quite an impressive success story." "Impressive. He must be a smart businessman." She smiled and leaned forward. "Between us, I think he had some help. His girlfriend invested a lot. She's got money, you know." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Lucky guy. They're a great couple. Been together almost 4 years." For years. The information sank into Harrison like a stone. Sophie had been 12 then, Daniel only 9. For years of lies. Over the following week, he pieced together more of the puzzle. He befriended a chatty trainer, listened to locker room conversations, checked social media accounts. Victoria had been careful to keep her own profile clean, but Marcus was less cautious. There were photos of them together at restaurants, parties, beach resorts, all taken during times when Victoria claimed to be with friends or at conferences. But Marcus wasn't the only one. A casual comment from a trainer. "Before Marcus, she was with that tech investor. What was his name?" Sent Harrison down another path. Soon he uncovered evidence of at least 2 other affairs. One with a businessman who frequently traveled to the city, another with a local artist whose gallery Victoria claimed to visit for cultural enrichment. Harrison meticulously documented everything. Names, dates, locations. He didn't confront Victoria with any evidence. Not yet. He was building a case. gathering ammunition for the war to come. 3 weeks after signing the divorce papers, a new thought struck him at midnight, jolting him from restless sleep. A suspicion that had been growing in the depths of his mind, an unthinkable possibility. The next morning he called in sick, the first time in years. After sending the children to school, he drove to a medical clinic across town. "I'd like to order paternity tests for 2 children," he told the receptionist. She handed him forms without judgment. "You'll need DNA samples from all parties." Harrison nodded. "I have access to the children's toothbrushes. Will that work?" "Yes, sir." "What about the mother?" "That's not necessary. I just need to know if I'm the father." The woman's eyes softened slightly. "Results take about a week." "Rush it," Harrison said, pulling out his credit card. "Please." 5 days later, an email arrived in his secure account. Harrison sat in his home office, cursor hovering over the attachment. Whatever was inside would change everything again. He clicked. The medical terminology was dense, but the conclusions were clear. Sophie, probability of paternity 0%. Daniel, probability of paternity 0%. Neither child was his biological offspring. Harrison leaned back in his chair, the room spinning slightly around him. 16 years of fatherhood, a lie. 13 years, a lie. He stood abruptly, needing to move. Pacing his office, he struggled to process this new reality. The children he had raised, taught, loved, they shared no DNA with him. Their biological fathers could be any of Victoria's lovers, or men he didn't even know about. Did it matter? Harrison stopped pacing, the questions surfacing in his mind. Did this change how he felt about Sophie and Daniel? Did it erase years of bedtime stories, teaching Sophie to code, cheering at Daniel's hockey games? No, it didn't. They were still his children, in every way that mattered. But Victoria had stolen something precious from him, the truth. She had let him believe these children were his flesh and blood while knowing they weren't. That night, as he helped Daniel with math homework and listened to Sophie talk about her day, Harrison looked at them with new eyes. He searched their faces for signs of their real fathers, for features that should have told him years ago. But all he saw were the children he loved. He wouldn't tell them. Not now, maybe never. This burden was his to bear. But Victoria would know that he knew. She would pay for every lie, every deception, every moment stolen from him. Harrison placed the paternity test results in a white envelope and put it in his briefcase. "Let the games begin," he whispered to the empty room. The Jade Garden restaurant gleamed downtown, its glass facade reflecting the city lights like stars. Inside, white tablecloths and crystal chandeliers created an atmosphere of refined elegance. This was the restaurant where Harrison had taken Victoria every year to celebrate their anniversary, where he had proposed 18 years ago. Now, he observed from his position at the bar as Victoria and Marcus sat at a corner table, their usual table. They were celebrating something, champagne glasses clinking, faces flushed with success. Victoria wore a new dress, expensive by the look of it. Marcus placed his hand over hers, thumb stroking her wrist in a familiar gesture. Harrison straightened his tie and picked up the white envelope from the bar. He had been waiting for this moment, timing it perfectly. Earlier that day, his lawyer had confirmed everything was in place. Now it was time for the first move in his carefully orchestrated game. He walked unhurriedly toward their table, his footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. Victoria saw him first, her smile freezing mid-laugh. Marcus followed her gaze, his expression shifting from confusion to smug satisfaction. Harrison. Victoria quickly recovered, sitting straighter in her chair. What a surprise. "Hello, Victoria." Harrison nodded politely, then turned to her companion. "You must be Marcus. I've heard a lot about you." Marcus gripped Victoria's hand tighter. "Look, man, I know this must be awkward, but..." Harrison raised his hand. "Not at all. I'm actually here to congratulate you both." Confusion flickered across their faces. "Congratulate us?" Victoria asked cautiously. "On your freedom," Harrison said smoothly. He placed the white envelope on the table between them, a small gift to commemorate the occasion. Victoria glanced at Marcus, then back at Harrison. "That's very civilized of you." "I've always believed in endings." Harrison stepped back. "Enjoy your evening." He turned and walked 3 steps before Victoria called after him, curiosity overcoming caution. "What is it?" Harrison stopped and looked back. "Open it and see." He continued toward the exit, positioning himself near the coat check, where he could observe without being too obvious. From there, he watched Victoria open the envelope with manicured fingers and extract the documents inside. Even from a distance, Harrison could see the moment understanding hit her. Her face lost all color, her hands visibly trembling as she passed the documents to Marcus. The paternity test results, clear and undeniable. Marcus scanned the papers, his expression growing darker. He pushed back from the table abruptly, the movement sharp and sudden. "You told me they were his." Marcus's voice carried across the restaurant, drawing the attention of other diners. "I thought they were," Victoria stammered, her composure completely shattered. "No, you knew," Harrison said quietly as he approached their table again. "You knew, or at least suspected. Now you'll know what it feels like to lose everything." The restaurant fell silent, diners watching the drama with poorly concealed interest. A waiter hovered nearby, uncertain whether to intervene. "You can't prove anything," Victoria hissed, clutching the documents. "This could be fake. The lab is reputable. Feel free to verify directly with them." Harrison smiled slightly, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I suspect you already know the truth. The timing fits, doesn't it? Sophie's birth coinciding with your affair with that tech investor? Daniel's birth during your affair with that artist." Marcus's face twisted with disgust. "You said I was the only one. Before him." He gestured toward Harrison. "Marcus, please let me explain." "Save it." Marcus stood, throwing his napkin on the table. "We're done." "But the divorce settlement," Victoria began. "Should be interesting," Harrison finished for her. He nodded to Marcus. "Best of luck to you." He walked away without looking back, Victoria's desperate attempts to salvage the situation following him out the door. Outside, the night air felt clean and cool against his face. For the first time since discovering Victoria's betrayal, Harrison felt a certain satisfaction. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from his lawyer. "Everything filed as discussed. Court date next week." Harrison quickly replied, "Proceeding as planned." Then he walked toward his car, the city lights blurring around him. Phase 1 complete. Phase 2 begins now. The next morning, Harrison sat at the kitchen table with Sophie and Daniel, their breakfasts largely untouched. He had prepared their favorites: blueberry pancakes for Daniel, avocado toast for Sophie, but the tension in the air made eating difficult. "Your mother called," he said. "She won't be picking you up this weekend." Daniel pushed his pancakes around his plate. "Is she sick?" "No, buddy. She's dealing with some personal issues." Sophie looked at him sharply. "What did you do? What makes you think I did anything?" "Because Mom's been acting stranger than usual lately, and now you're being all quiet and calm, like when you've solved a difficult puzzle." Sophie set down her fork. "So what happened?" Harrison carefully considered his next words. "Your mother and I are handling the divorce in our own ways. My way is perhaps more strategic than she expected." "You're getting revenge on her," Sophie said flatly. "I'm ensuring fairness." "It's because of Marcus, isn't it?" Daniel interjected. Both Harrison and Sophie turned to stare at him. "You know Marcus?" Harrison asked, surprised. Daniel shrugged. "Mom's always talking to him on the phone, and once when she took us to the mall, we had ice cream with him. He has tattoos." The boy sounded impressed by this last detail. Harrison absorbed this new information, anger flaring briefly before he suppressed it. "Yes, this involves Marcus and some other things between your mother and me. But I don't want you two worrying about adult problems." "We're not babies, Dad," Sophie protested. "I know, but this is between your mother and me." Harrison stood, collecting his empty coffee cup. "Hurry up and finish. The school bus comes in 20 minutes. That evening, Harrison received a call from Victoria. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message afterward. "You bastard," her voice hissed through the speaker. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Marcus won't even talk to me now. Is this what you wanted? To ruin everything? Damn it, call me back. We need to talk about what you're doing." Harrison deleted the message without replying. His lawyer had advised minimal contact except through official channels, and he intended to follow that advice. The court date was Thursday. The courthouse loomed imposing under gray skies, rain falling steadily as Harrison arrived with his lawyer, Nathan Chong. They passed through security and headed to the designated courtroom, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. When they entered, Victoria and her lawyer were already seated. Victoria wore a conservative navy suit, her hair pulled back severely. She looked thinner than Harrison remembered, the stress of recent weeks evident in her posture. Judge Margaret Chun, a stern woman in her 60s, called the court to order promptly at 9 o'clock. The proceedings moved quickly, both lawyers presenting their cases. Nathan methodically outlined Victoria's infidelity, paternity fraud, and the legally binding agreements she had signed. Victoria's lawyer, Michael Liu, tried to paint Victoria as a victim of an emotionally distant husband who had manipulated her into signing unfair agreements. But his arguments seemed pale against the mountain of evidence Nathan presented. When Judge Chin finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades in the courtroom. "Mrs. Victoria, did you read the divorce agreement before signing it?" Victoria hesitated. "I skimmed it. I was upset." "Did Mr. Harrison prevent you from seeking legal counsel?" "No, but you understood that by signing you agreed to the terms contained therein?" "Generally, yes, but I didn't realize." "Mrs. Victoria," Judge Chin's tone brooked no further evasion. "The court cannot protect individuals from their own poor decisions. The agreement you signed is legally binding. The infidelity clauses in your prenuptial agreement are enforceable, and the evidence of paternity fraud is frankly disturbing." Victoria paled. "Therefore, this court upholds the financial arrangements outlined in the divorce agreement. Mrs. Victoria shall retain only assets in her name alone and designated personal property. Mr. Harrison retains all other marital assets, including the family home. Child support will be determined pending further paternity test results, should Mrs. Victoria choose to pursue it." The gavel fell with finality. Victoria sat in shock, while Michael Liu whispered urgently in her ear. Harrison felt no triumph, no joy, only a cold certainty that some form of justice had been served. Outside the courthouse, Victoria caught up with him, grabbing his arm. "You've ruined me," she hissed, tears threatening to spill. "I have nothing left." Harrison gently removed her hand. "You have everything you brought into this marriage, Victoria. Your freedom. Isn't that what you wanted? Where am I supposed to go? What about the children?" "You could try Marcus," Harrison suggested mildly. "Oh wait, he's dealing with his own financial investigation. How unfortunate." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "You did that too, the audit." Harrison simply smiled. "Have a good day, Victoria." He walked away, leaving her standing in the courthouse hallway with the ruins of her plans scattered around her. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the day he signed the divorce papers, Harrison received a letter. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive, his name and address written in familiar handwriting, Victoria's handwriting. The return address was from a distant city. She had indeed taken that job, moving away 3 months ago. Daniel had visited her once, returning from spring break with stories of a small but nice apartment, a city full of tall buildings, and a mother who seemed more focused than he remembered. Sophie had chosen not to go. "Maybe someday," she told Harrison when he asked if she might reconsider. "But not now. I'm not ready yet." Now this letter. Harrison suspected its contents. Perhaps an apology, maybe a request for reconciliation or friendship. Victoria had been working with a therapist, according to Daniel. Mom talks a lot about making amends. Whatever it was, Harrison placed the unopened letter in the bottom drawer of his desk. Maybe someday he would read it. Maybe not. Either way, it no longer held power over him. His office door opened, and Elena peeked in. "Ready? Everyone's waiting." Harrison smiled and pushed the drawer closed. "Coming." He followed her downstairs where guests had gathered in the living room. Sophie and Daniel sat on the couch, the puppy Max sprawled across their feet. Nathan, Harrison's lawyer-turned-friend, stood by the fireplace chatting with colleagues from Harrison's company. Several neighbors and friends completed the small gathering. "Everyone listen," Elena called out, getting their attention. She slipped her hand into Harrison's, the ring on her finger catching the light. "We have an announcement." Harrison squeezed her hand, looking around at the faces of people who had supported him through the darkest period of his life. "As you know, Elena and I got engaged last month." Congratulations rose from the group. "What you don't know," he continued, "is that we've set a date and a venue. Well, everything." Sophie's eyes widened as Elena grinned. "Next month. Small ceremony, just family and close friends." She glanced at Harrison. "We don't want to wait." "Why the rush?" Nathan raised an eyebrow. Harrison and Elena exchanged a look, then she answered. "Because in about 7 months, we're going to need a bigger house." A moment of stunned silence, then an explosion of joy. Sophie jumped from the couch, screaming with delight, hugging Elena. Daniel looked confused until Harrison clarified. "We're having a baby, buddy." The boy's face split into a huge grin. "I'm going to be a big brother?" "Awesome." The celebration continued around them, but Harrison found himself stepping back, watching it all unfold with wonder. These people, these lives, this was his real victory. Not the careful dismantling of Victoria's schemes, not the financial revenge, not even custody of the children. The real victory was this: standing in a room full of genuine emotion with a beautiful future full of possibilities, surrounded by people who truly knew him and chose to be here. That night, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Harrison stood in the backyard looking up at the stars. Elena wrapped her arms around him from behind, her arms encircling his waist. "What are you thinking about?" she murmured against his shoulder. "Just how far we've come," he replied. "A year ago I was consumed by betrayal, and now." He turned to face Elena, gently placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Now I can barely remember why it once seemed so important." "It's called healing," she said, covering his hand with hers. "Moving forward." Harrison nodded. "There was a letter from Victoria today. I didn't open it. Do you want to?" "No. Whatever she has to say belongs in the past." He kissed Elena softly. "I'm more interested in the future." Inside the house, in the bottom drawer of his desk, Victoria's unopened letter lay forgotten. In a few months, during the move to a larger house for their growing family, the letter would be discarded along with other remnants of a life that no longer belonged to him. The man who had once plotted elaborate revenge for betrayal had vanished, transformed by time, love, and the simple act of choosing to live well. In his place stood Harrison, father, soon-to-be husband, soon-to-be dad again, a man who had discovered that the best revenge wasn't destruction, but creation. As for Victoria, she would continue in her distant city, gradually rebuilding her relationship with Daniel, tentatively reaching out to Sophie through emails and birthday cards. She would never fully recover the life she had so carelessly discarded, but she would find a different kind of peace in acceptance and small acts of redemption. Harrison realized, standing in the yard with the woman he loved, that this was the final laugh, not the malicious chuckle of victory, but the genuine laughter of joy that comes from understanding that the best way to overcome darkness is to create light. The past was dead. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.